No, I have not.
Have you decided not to?
I'm trying to figure out how to pay for it. That's the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing for me. Where are my notes? Yeah. I think most of us will. That will be most of our truths. So. Right. How was everyone this evening?
Good.
Good. Glad you guys made it safely. The roads are bad with Minnesota drivers. It's not even the weather. It's the drivers themselves.
A little
It
water.
snowed today, they were driving for
Yeah.
We're delighted to have Andre Cohen here because, I could never pay him enough money because this comes from his heart. This is a part of his business certainly, but it's mostly from here. And that's what I appreciate. He's honest, he's open, and so I hope you in turn will share that with Andre. Thank you.
First thing, what I'd like for you guys to do is you take out a piece of paper and draw 5 circles on a piece of paper that's large enough to put information inside of it. So 5 circles, large enough to put information inside of each of those circles. So in each one of those circles, what I'd like for you to do is to put one thing that you value in each of those circles. So it could be a noun, a concept, a thing, a person, one thing that you value in each one of those circles. So someone might put freedom, or their cabin home, or a family member, one thing that you value in each one of those circles. Most people have 4, if not all 5. Don't stress out. This is a very low, don't stress out. So if it's, I don't know what could come to mind for you, but just the first thing that comes off the top of your head as something that you value. Looks like most people have. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go ahead and play a game. And the game is very simple. What I'd like for you to do is I want you to find 2 people in the room that share one of your values that you have on your paper. Or if they agree with it. So they agree that is an important thing that you could value, or they actually have it on their paper. I want them to put their signature in the circle. All right? So find 2 people for each one of your circles and have them put their signature for the ones that they either agree with or they actually have on their paper. All right? I'm going to give you a limited amount of time. So we'll start in about 3 seconds. There's not a second hand on there. So I have to count Mississippi.
Yeah.
So on your mark, get set, go. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. 3 Mississippi. 4 Mississippi. 5 Mississippi. 6 Mississippi. 7 Mississippi.
That'd be a different person for each one, maybe, and kind of very little.
However, yep, that might give us some benefits.
By the way. Happiness, anything like that? Something that I agree with. Education. Don't tell me.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Family, friends,
These are very similar. This is yours. That would read it there.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and all right. Game over. Game over. So, my name is Andre Cohen, and I'm an adjunct instructor here, and so I teach in the Health and Wellness, Organizational Wellness program. It was formerly the Leadership in Management and Organization stuff. So, so I probably get in like 1 or 2 classes a year, so you may not necessarily see me in a classroom setting all that often. But I also do lectures on Saturdays. So twice a month I do lectures, and hopefully you'll see an email or something about those lectures. And I'm trying to think, I can't remember what the topic is for this one coming up, but I think it has something to do with like white privilege or something like that. So there's always some kind of diversity topic that we're talking about in those lectures. And so why do you think I might start out a session doing a game like this? To see what we have in common. How many people have been in a diversity training or something like that before? Please raise your hand. All right, you are the people I have to fix. Because a lot of times those trainings have done more damage oftentimes than they've done good. Beth, you had a question?
If you distinguish between diversity training or anti-racism training.
So you just hit a button for me. So, and you'll see why you hit a button for me in just a second. I do make the differentiation, although I don't necessarily. Not everyone does that, and so sometimes it's confusing. So I try to use terms that are helpful to the masses. But I do know and think that there's a difference between those, and there's also cultural competence. And I mean, there are ways that we can dissect this thing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about anti-racism training in as a part of my presentation too. One of the things you will know about me in the short time that we were together, and you can look at the literature I have online, the videos, the speeches, all that stuff. You'll see a common thing that in a lot of ways I'm not conventional. And so I think a lot of the conventional ways of thinking about diversity actually sucks. And so I think it's time for us to think about things in new ways and do new things. All right. So I want you to hold on to that circle exercise. We'll come back to that a little bit later in the presentation. But I want to go ahead and show this video because I think this video sets up for me the new paradigm that we have to have in doing our work, our diversity work, or our dismantling or undoing racism, all sorts of oppression things that we have to kind of work with. So I'm going to quit talking because I'll get tongue-tied. So I'll show this video, and I'll make it big so you can see the whole screen. And so I will tell you that I don't know if anybody has heard of T-Pain. Does anyone know T-Pain? He's a popular music star, and so he has this computer voice thing that he does to voices that is cool with the kids. And so I found this YouTube video that's cool with the kids. But I wanted to share this with you. So it sounds a little augmented, so it takes some time to get acclimated to the voice. But I think you can get the rhythm of what's going on in this piece. So.
With a greater readiness, let us stand with a greater determination. Let us move on in these powerful days of challenge. 'cause I'm at the mountaintop. And I look over and I see the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
All right. Can anybody tell me what speech is that? What speech is this a cut from? It is not the I Have a Dream speech. What speech is it? What's the hook? Mine eyes what? Okay, that's a song. Very good. He did say that. Right? What song is that? Battle Hymn of the Republic. Right? Okay. So what other things did you hear? What did they keep going back to? Okay. Something about the Promised Land. What was his vantage point of the Promised Land? Mountaintop. So this is from the mountaintop speech. All right. So there are probably 4 now. This is just me, and I can be an educational snob, if you will, around this kind of stuff. But his stuff is on YouTube, freely accessed. If you want to do this work, you got to know what he said and why he said it. Okay, and so because the principles that he raises and the questions that he raises are not black questions and are not black issues. What he raises are human issues. And so if we want to understand where we are today, we have to go back and look at this guy. Here's an example of why. So I'm in a classroom. I'm at a conference, and I opened the floor for questions. And a white teacher, asked me, "How do I respond to my how do I work with my black kids so that they don't use the N-word?" And so I go into my regular spiel because that's a question I get quite often. It's on my FAQ list. So I just go straight to my answer. So I deliver, an answer to her. And I said, because one of the things that showed up in one of the places I was that there was a kid who sent another kid a picture of a noose. And, that caused all this kind of stuff. And she looks at me after I've given her the explanation of why she shouldn't allow her kids to use the N-word, some strategies to help them not use the N-word. So I go through all of this conversation, and she asked me the question, what is a noose? Like, why is that important in this conversation? I was dumbfounded, because now I'm like, I told you about the N-word and how not to use it, but what do you think the N-word means? So what are you bringing to the situation that I now have to recognize? Does anyone understand what a noose represents or symbolizes for African Americans?
Yeah.
Lynching, right? Yeah, strange fruit, right?
Strange fruit.
So Billie Holiday sang a song called "Strange Fruit." Why would Billie Holiday was an African American woman? What was she talking about in terms of strange fruit? People hanging from trees as strange fruit. And that's something in the South that is kind of code language, right? So that people can have open conversations, or in the case of African Americans, they could talk with each other, and other folks wouldn't necessarily know what they're talking about. But when you say strange fruit, people get a pretty good sense that it's probably not a good thing. So people hanging from trees, nooses. So she didn't have any context for what I was saying, and so we started talking about the N-word, and come to find out, she didn't understand why it was a bad thing for them to say. She just knew that there was something they shouldn't say. So I had to take her, a few steps back to kind of bring her forward so that she could understand, not just in a mental context as to why it's bad, but look at some of the spiritual aspects as to why a word like that might be bad for people to use even among themselves. So we'll touch on that a little bit more as well. But what were some of the things? I heard you guys talk about Promised Land. He talked about mountaintop. What else did he talk about? Not getting there himself. What else did he talk about in that short piece?
Albany, Georgia, specifically like Albany, Georgia.
He talked about Albany. Yep, he talked about Albany. He talked about the things that the timeline in which the civil rights movement was happening. Why did he use things like promised land, mountaintop, not getting there? Why did he use that phraseology? Where does that phraseology come from? The Bible. All right. And more specifically, so he's a preacher, so this makes sense for him to use the Bible as his pretext or his allegory, if you will, right? But what specifically was he referring to? Something about Exodus. So tell me more about Exodus.
Moses led the people out of Egypt,
So-
out of oppression, into the promised land.
So-
But before he got to the promised land, he went to the mountaintop and saw the promised land, and he was not allowed to go.
He was not allowed to go. So he is comparing himself with Moses. He's also comparing the struggle with the children of Israel. He's also making the leap to say that just as the children of Israel made it to the promised land, that these groups of people who are suffering this injustice and under the umbrella of oppression will at some point make it. Now, the most ironic thing about this whole piece that just sends chills down my spine when I hear this is that he delivers this speech and he says, I'm not going to make it. You guys are going to go ahead without me. I may not make it with you. But he delivers this speech the night before he's assassinated. I don't know about you, but that is just absolutely amazing and incredible that he just knew something was in the air, right? But so here's the next part of the story, right? So if he's using himself, Moses did not make it into the promised land. Neither did Dr. King make it into the promised land. But the story doesn't stop there in the book of Exodus, right? So what happens next in the book of Exodus? What happens is they're standing at the outskirts of the promised land. And so they decide that they probably want to see what they're in for before they go into the promised land. Because they've lost so many people in the wilderness that you guys have seen the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, right? You know, with the tablets and right. Okay, so they're on the outskirts of the promised land, and so they decide to send teams of surveyors or spies into the land, right? And so they send these two guys go out there together, Joshua and Caleb, and they go and they say, hey, this is the land of milk and honey. There's milk and honey everywhere. There are grapes the size of a man's head. They're like, this is the greatest thing ever. Now, there were some other dudes that also came back, and they had a little different report. Their report was, yeah, there is milk and honey, and yes, they are correct that there are grapes the size of a man's head, and there are also giants and monsters in the land. And so, what do you think the book of Exodus or the Torah or scriptures say about what their decision was? Do you think their decision was to run from those monsters and go back into captivity, or what did they decide to do? They decided to move forward and fight those monsters. Right? So Joshua and Caleb became the leaders of Israel, and they went in there and they started conquering those monsters. Now, if I'm taking over for someone who did such an excellent job, what do you think might be one of the biggest problems I might have with the people that I'm leading? Because they know I'm second fiddle. I just came because the other guy didn't come. So what do you think might be some of the issues I might have to deal with having these folks? Building trust, loyalty and trust. Who do they have loyalty to? Is there loyalty to me? It's to Moses, right? And they're constantly saying, well, Moses wouldn't have done it like this. Moses did this and Moses did that. He parted the Red Sea. He talked to bushes. You know, there were pillars of smoke and fire that followed him everywhere he went. He brought us manna. He got water from a rock. What do you think Joshua and Caleb had to do to those people who kept talking about what Moses would do? He had to remind them of one simple fact. And sometimes those of us who hear these kinds of facts, we get sensitive and don't want to recognize the truth of what they're saying. But the first thing he had to do with them is to establish and help them remember the fact that Moses is dead. Moses is dead. Yep, so, yep, you're right. That's how Moses would have done it. This is how, Dr. King would have done it. But unfortunately, Moses is dead. Dr. King is dead. So those people being dead, so now who's, first of all, will there be another Moses type person to ever come back? Do you think there'll be a Moses? Do you think there'll be another Dr. King? Do you think there'll be another Gandhi, another Mother Teresa? My answer is no. Each of those DNA sequences were unique. Will there be another you? No. At some point, the people had to realize that their leaders were dead, and so then it became whose responsibility to carry on this mission? Whose responsibility? Their own. Who are going to be the civil rights leaders of today? I'm going to tell you, it's not people with titles, it's people with relationships. If you have a relationship with someone, you are a civil rights leader. Now, what you're leading them to is more important than how you're leading them. Because no matter what you believe, there are people who are watching you, watching what you do and what you don't do, what you say and what you don't say. And they're taking their clues about who they think they should be and who you'll allow them to be. All right? So, we'll keep going. I didn't want to get real preachy, but that's who I am. So, I like to talk about this in terms of Diversity 101, only because it's not a 101 basic class, but if I said it was a 300 level course, that might bore people, right? So this is, I try to make it sexy and cool. So I'm going to show a video, and then I want us to talk about this next video. How many people have seen that before? I'm sure it's been on America's Funniest Videos and all this other stuff. So I want to talk about this clip in two parts. First, I want to tell me what are your observations of what you see going on. So what do you see going on here? The child wanting attention. All right. He's being ignored. To extinguish his behavior. All right. What else do you see going on?
He's very aware if someone's watching or not.
Okay, so he's very aware if someone is watching him or not.
His emotional state kind of subsides when no one is watching him.
Okay, so his emotional state subsides when no one is watching him.
He's not trying anything
He's not trying anything new. As a matter of fact, he keeps trying what he's trying. Okay? So my core question, so it's obvious that we see some things here. So I want to go to the child's motivation. Why do you think that the child is behaving in this way? Okay, so he wants attention. So we saw him seeking attention, and we think that's his core want. Yes, sir.
Well, I believe the child has done this before and has gotten what
What he wants.
they were looking for. So that's why this child keeps going back to doing that.
But why does he keep doing it?
Because he knows eventually they're going to the parents will give in and pick him up and give him the attention that he wants.
Okay.
So hopefully they're ignoring him to get rid of the behavior.
But he
But-
obviously knows that what?
That they're going to give in.
At some point, right? Okay, so the reason he's doing this is really clear, and you're absolutely correct, right? His behavior has worked in the past, and so as human beings, we thrive on success. That's what's made us the beings we are today, right? Being successful. And so he assumes that because it was successful in the past, if I see a similar situation in my present state, that I can also assume that what? So it worked in the past, I can make the assumption that it'll work when? Now, in the present. Which also means, because we have the ability to think ahead in time, he can also make the assumption that it will work when? In the future. Given a similar situation. Right? So it worked in the past, it should work in the present, and more than likely it will also work in the future. Is his behavior working?
Not in the present.
Not in the present, okay. Is it working?
It is.
It is? Okay. How do you know?
Well, the camera's going, he's obviously aware of it, and so it's whether they know it or not, they're feeling it, you know?
Well, by the parents moving, each time he comes over, moving over, and knowing that he's coming back over, and the child seeing, okay, they're recognizing me, they're giving me the attention, saying, okay, we know you're here, but we're going to go over here, and we're going to see if you're going to come over here. And the child will come back over and see that they're observing him again and go back. So what they should probably just, stay in one place and just sit there and ignore him.
Put themselves in the timeout.
Put themselves in a timeout, and ignore him. Okay. I would, well, first of all, can we say that this, would it be safe to say that this is not his first time doing this?
Right.
Okay. That it's probably not his second or third time doing this, right? So they know that this is a pattern of behavior. So is this pattern of behavior getting him what he wants? And it's my argument that it's not working. How do we know that it's not working? They're playing a game with him, right? I mean, you know that he's not being able to get what he wants. I know he's not being able to get what he wants. The parents know he's not getting what he wants. The dog knows he's not getting what he wants, right? When will the child's behavior change? When he gets tired of not getting what he wants?
When he finds a new solution or something like that.
Try something different.
Well, we already know that it's not working, but who doesn't know? The kid. When the kid realizes that falling down on the ground, crying, making a scene is not going to get him what he wants, it is at that point that he changes his behavior. How do you, ultimately, how do you get an alcoholic to change their behavior? They have to want to change their behavior. They have to recognize that what they're doing doesn't work. Right? When you encounter a person that is a bigot, or a person who is not culturally competent, or a person that is not politically correct, right? You can talk all day until you're blue in the face, but until they recognize that their behavior is not getting them what they want, they will continue to get that behavior. Now, why is it difficult? And this is something to remember. Why is it difficult to get people to change their behavior? Because they're getting what they want. And so as practitioners, it is our job not to change what they want, but I know if I put dough on my hook, I'm going to get a certain kind of fish. If I put a night crawler on my hook, I'll catch another kind of fish. If I put a crayfish on my hook, I'll get another kind of fish. So as a helper, it's important for us to know what the motivations of the people that we're working with are. All right? And I'm going to tell you what those motivations are because you've also started to study those in some of your other classes, but we'll refine those today. All right? So here's some of my basic premises of the work that I do. First of all, people can learn, change, and grow. Who I am today does not have to dictate who I will be tomorrow. Who my parents were, whatever their state of socioeconomic status was, does not automatically determine who I will be. What is the ultimate determination of my abilities or who I am? Myself?
The sense that I make out of my life experience.
The sense that I make out of my life experience. How do we boil that down to very simplistic language?
Trial and error.
My choices. My choices. You had a question, Doc. Okay. So my choices every day determine what my ultimate outcome is. People will, I like to use credit because a lot of people that I work with either have a challenge with their credit or challenging credit. And I ask them, how do you, when do you think you'll have good credit? They're like, well, I don't know because it's going to be 7 years and this stuff has to fall off and all of this other stuff. And the truth of the matter is you can have good credit starting today. Pay your bills today and pay them tomorrow and pay them the next day. That is when you start having good credit. It accumulates going back forward just like it has accumulated going backwards, right? And so people can learn, change, and grow. All human behavior is goal-directed. People do things for a reason. There is a motive as to why people do things. There are very few people who are, I think the term is psychotic, that do things for absolutely no reason at all. But people have, all human behavior is goal-directed. And people do what makes sense to them, even if it doesn't make sense to who? To you. Them behaving in the way that they choose to behave and having the worldviews that they do is not predicated on you understanding why they do that. Parents who, I've dealt with some parents who have had children and they've taken their children's social security number to get housing or to get some kind of, or use their credit to do some things. They actually thought that was a good idea. They didn't say, you know what, I want to destroy my kid's credit. I'm trying to destroy my life. How many times have you felt that your parents are really out to get you just because they wouldn't let you do a thing, right? That wasn't their intention. They were trying to do the best for you. And so people do what makes sense to them, and that attitude is a response to a goal. What have you been taught about what an attitude is? What's an attitude? What's an attitude?
Energy.
It's energy, a set of beliefs. What would you say, Ted? What's an attitude?
It's your approach.
Your approach to people. Okay. Kathy, have you known anybody with an attitude?
Well, when you say it, I guess normally we think of it as negative.
Okay. So typically it's thought of as negative. All right. Michael, attitude?
Maybe not.
Have you known anybody with an attitude?
Yeah, my daughter.
Your daughter. All right. How old is she?
13.
Oh, no. Tons of attitude, man. Does she do this?
No, I stopped her from that. It's the whole eye roll and whatever, Dad.
Whatever. Right? And they can even do it with a breath.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They don't even have to say anything. You can, but stop that! I'm going to... Right? And so my parents were very much, they had the same kind of definition of attitude. And they would say things to me like, fix your face. Boy, you better fix your attitude. Or go to your room till you learn how to act. So I'd be in my room for a while, and then I'd step out into the hallway. To be or not to be? I spent a lot of time in my room. That's not what they were talking about, right? And so it was very difficult for me to adjust my attitude because I never knew exactly what they were talking about. And then it hit me one day. So my dad is a preacher. And so growing up, we would go to church on Sunday at 7:30 a.m. and we close the church at 11:30 p.m. We stop at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. All right? So church all day on Sunday. Friday night, I asked my dad for the car. What does my dad say? Because he loves me, what does he say? He says, yes, he loves me, right? So I get the car, I'm kicking it with my boys, I put gas in the car, I come in before curfew, and my dad says I have what kind of an attitude? The car's full of gas, I'm in before curfew. What does he say about my attitude? I got a good attitude, right? A positive attitude. What do I say about my dad's attitude? That he also has a good or a positive attitude, right? So Sunday rolls around. My best friend Dexter calls me at noon and says, Andre, can you pick me up for the movies? What do I know about Sunday? Church. All day, right? But I'm feeling good. I'm like, Jesus is my friend, you know? Let me gamble on Jesus. I'm like, come on, Jesus, hook a brother up, right? So I go up to my dad and I say, Dad, can I borrow the car? What does my dad say?
You work on your attitude.
He says, no! And not only does he say no, but he gives me a lecture about how I'm leading people to hell. Because in our household, every negative consequence was, the ultimate consequence was hell, right? And so, consequently, I don't get the car, and so I say my dad has what kind of an attitude? A bad attitude. And now what does he say about my attitude? That I have a bad attitude. So what is it that actually determines one's attitude? The situation? Perception? How people view you?
Your response to how you are perceiving your progress towards your goal.
When I get what I want, I have a positive attitude. When I'm denied access or limited or slow access to my goal, I have a bad attitude.
So if you were told your friend, no, I'm sorry, I can't go, then his goal of getting you to take him to the movies would not have been met. And his response, his attitude then would have been negative, meaning he would have had a bad attitude.
Possibly.
And then your response to him would have also been, hey, cut me some slack, give me a break, because your goal would have been different from his.
That's absolutely correct.
And your response, therefore, would have been that he has a bad attitude.
When we share goals, we have good attitudes. I mean, think about your 13-year-old daughter, right? You give her what she wants, and it's like she purrs. You know, Dad, you're the best dad. Right? She wants to cuddle with you and hang out. But at the same time, when you tell her no, what kind of attitude do you get? A bad, negative attitude, right? And so if I'm a helper and I encounter a client, I encounter a coworker, and they have a bad attitude, what is it that I know about them for sure?
They get what they want.
They're not getting what they want. And so as a helper, what then becomes my responsibility? It's a twofold responsibility. What's my first responsibility?
Find out what they want.
I can find out or not, but ultimately, do they care if I find out?
No,
No. What's the best thing I can do for them? You're on the right path, Kathy. Help them get what they want. That's pretty simple, right? But what if there is an eventuality where I can't, ethically, or I don't have the resources, or they don't have the ability to actually obtain what it is that they want? Then what becomes my responsibility to them? To encourage them? To jump off a cliff? What's my responsibility then? So my first responsibility was to help them get their goal. Their goal is not something they can get. So now my responsibility is what? I'm not accepting that they can't.
Change their goal.
To help them change their goal. Right? Because they have to, again, the baby wouldn't stop falling down until he recognized that he needed to change. And so if the goal is not accomplishable, then we need to help them recognize that it's not accomplishable. All right? Does that make sense? Okay. I know you're wondering, like, what does this have to do with diversity? How does this play out? So one of the ways that I've learned about how to deal with people is using these very principles to help people. Bigots aren't bigots because they thought it was a good idea. They're bigots because at some point it worked for them. It's that simple. And I can't change them from being a bigot until when? Until they realize that that behavior is not getting them what they want. Okay? So that's...
Can we flesh that out a little bit?
Yeah, let's work with that.
What's an example of being a bigot working for somebody?
So, in the 1950s, to call an African American a nigger worked. Because everybody was doing it. Because it was acceptable. It worked. Those people who lived in the 1950s who called people that still exist today. Calling someone that out in public today, does that work? The way it did in 1950s? No. Another example, because I don't want to stay on the racial thing, but just thinking of the roles of women. You know, my grandmother, as a mother, had a different existence than my mother. The things she put up with from my grandfather, there's no way that my mother was going to put up with that same kind of stuff from my father. So oftentimes the social context of where people are coming from and what worked for them in the past, when they are not savvy enough or not self-reflective enough, they try to use old techniques in a modern time that is out of place.
Okay.
All right? Yes, sir.
I can even bring it home a little further for you. It would work in a situation where you need something to blame. Okay? So as a bigot, right, if I had something to blame, if I lost a job, if I had something gone wrong in my life, and then it would work for me to blame it on someone else if someone else had caused it in proximity.
So scapegoating is an example
Scapegoat
of
is the
that.
way it works. A guy,
Right.
one guy was in the military, his name was Sergeant Bill. He said, "Man, you ever get racist?" I said, "Sometimes." With me too. And we started talking about that, why we would do that. And it's at times, something goes wrong, something gets stolen, something, whatever the case may be, maybe somebody offends his family, then it's a convenient thing to work, to bring reason to something.
And that's probably one of the best ways to talk about it. It's a way to bring reason to things that we can't explain. Right?
Private logic.
It is the private logic.
Doesn't get you your job back, but it makes you feel a little bit better.
Thank you.
And
See,
your
I
private
wasn't-
logic leads
Yeah.
is based on a mistaken belief,
Yeah.
which produces socially useless movement towards a fictive goal.
I could never play
That's
pro
right.
athlete. I could never be a pro athlete because, right?
Blah, blah, blah,
blah, blah, blah, blah. I could,
It
right?
doesn't even matter at that
It
point,
works.
right? And so here's the I'll just let the cat out of the bag then, because that's where we are. Ba-dow! Does this seem familiar? So what's the baby's goal? One of these three, right? What is the bigot's goal? One of these three. What is the social liberal's goal? One of these three. What is the social conservative's goal? One of these three. Right? Addicts, for whatever reason. One of these three is missing, and so they go to a foreign substance to try to get one of these three. Right? Once I know what kind of bait to put on my hook, then I can start working with folks. Because if I can figure out which one of these three that's missing, you know, Abraham Maslow talked about there being 5 or 7, depending on what model you want to use. I like looking at these 3 because it's just simple. But once you know what hooks people, you can start to understand them. I understand that and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I want to walk in this fallacy, but it is my belief that those people who are being bigoted aren't doing it because in their DNA they are socially constructed or genetically predetermined to be that way, but that they learn that because that behavior worked for them in the past to get one of these 3 things. And so they believe that it'll work now, and they'll continue to think that it works until they're able to find a different way to get to these things. All right? Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. Kathy's looking at me like, this is a lot to take in. I'm gonna think on this. So, I need to keep going back over there. We'll skip that. So here is, so you talked about anti-racism. Did you use anti-racism, or did you say?
Yes, or dismantling.
Dismantling racism, okay. So, first of all, I hate diversity training. I would have to tell you that. And I hate it typically for 3 reasons. One of the things that happens is that a supervisor or manager goes to a conference, and in the words of my father, they get saved, right? So they see the light. They want to correct everything. They see the errors of their ways, and then they kick into reason number 2. So they come back to our offices, and they try to convert all of us to be like them, right? The other part of number 2 is that a lot of times diversity trainings happens, or we get called together for a training of some sort because one person messed up. And so instead of having the courage to deal with that one person, they bring us all together, and that one person still doesn't get it. You know, I don't know if you've been in those situations, right? So that's the second reason. The third reason is that I think that the trainers themselves are pompous and arrogant, goody two-shoes. And I think we all have stuff to work on. And I'll be transparent. I have stuff to work on, right? But typically when we have these conversations of diversity, this is the kind of stuff that we end up talking about. We talk about this concept of political correctness. And what is political correctness?
Using the proper words.
Using the proper words, saying the right thing, knowing what to call people is what we typically say is political correctness. But quite frankly, political correctness has become a joke.
It's not offending the chronically offended.
Yeah, it's not offending the chronically offended. It is, it is non-communication because I don't know what to call people, so I won't say anything, right? But I remember I was in a training once, and a woman stood up and she said, "Andre, I want to know why all the colored people are moving into my neighborhood." How do you think the audience responded? Yeah, they were like, right? And why do you think they were? Because she said colored and what? You're not supposed to say that. That is not politically correct, right? But as I looked at her, what I noticed was that there was a light shining from her, that she had a pure heart. It was clear that she did not have a lot of stamps in her passport. It was clear that she didn't go to all the Ivy League schools to learn the fancy language. And so what do you think my responsibility to her was? What did I do? To her question.
Yeah.
I answered her question. We can talk about political correct stuff later, but I had to honor the fact that she had a question that needed to be answered. All right? A lot of times, because at the same time, I've talked with people who've been politically correct. And as they're talking to you, your skin just crawls. Because you can hear the nastiness in their heart. But they have the right words, right? So it's not about political correctness. It's not about blame, fault, and guilt. It's not about therapy. A lot of times in trainings, trainers really get happy and excited if they can make people cry or make people feel bad about themselves. And that's not what it is. That's not what it's about. And diversity is not just about black and white, and I mean the metaphorical construct as well as the racial construct. There are a lot of other people involved in this conversation than just black and white, and there's more ways to think about diversity than just black and white. It's also not about meritocracy, and meritocracy is the concept that if you work hard enough, you can be just like me. Now, what's the problem with that meritocracy concept? It's not true. What else?
Well, it's not about being like me, it's about being your own.
Yeah. Who am I to be the measurement? Who am I to be the ruler? It would be a shame for LeBron James to be forced to play basketball the way I do. Yeah, really, it would be. It would be a shame, right? So meritocracy, and we try to always say that the new people who come to our country or the people who haven't been a part of our system, they just need to work hard enough. So let's give them more resources, let's give them more opportunities and fewer resources to be just like us, right? And lastly, diversity is not about tolerance. Now, a lot of trainers and people get nervous when I say that diversity is not about tolerance. Why do they get nervous, do you think?
That's what they need, because of the corporate environment.
Okay, so in a corporate environment, that's what they need. Okay, what else?
Because it's not about tolerance, it's more about acceptance.
Okay, it's not about tolerance, it's more about acceptance. Go
Tolerance
ahead.
means like putting up with something. Diversity is, I put it with like a celebration of difference, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
In my mind.
Yeah. Quick story. My brother-in-law came to visit. I tolerated that dude. Why?
His family.
I knew when he was leaving. Tolerance not only means to put up with, but it means to put up with until when? Until you don't have to, right? So diversity is not about tolerance. Now, what I will say is that tolerance, meritocracy, and political correctness are great first steps. They are great first steps. And I will also say that babies drink milk. And why do babies drink milk? Because they don't have teeth. What else? That's where they are developmentally. It's the simplest form of nourishment that they can handle, right? But at some point, babies move from milk to tofu. I'm a part-time vegetarian, more of a herbivore. So that's important. So ultimately, I'll get to this, and then we can kind of take a break or have some more conversation. So ultimately, what is diversity, or what are we trying to gain when we get to diversity? So I like Wheel of Fortune. So I have a Wheel of Fortune puzzle up here. So I want you to try to figure out what the phrase is. Yes. There is dignity and honor in being human. All right? There's dignity and honor in being human. So, what is dignity? How do you define dignity? It's hard? Okay.
Hard to define. The first place my mind goes is, the metaphor of somebody holding their head up.
Okay.
Not looking down.
Okay, so not looking down, holding your head up, dignity. What is
humble, confident, feel a right to exist.
Yeah, a right to exist. Dignity. People honoring your right to exist, right? Yeah. Is dignity something that you have or something that you can give? What was that, Kathy?
Yeah, both.
It is in fact both, right? Now the interesting thing is, I don't know if you guys have been around town, but sometimes you'll see on the expressway or entry ramps, you'll see people holding up cardboard signs. And what are those people asking for on those cardboard signs? Help, okay. Money, job. I saw one sign once when I was in Seattle, and it said, "My parents were killed by kangaroo ninjas. need money for kung fu lessons. that was kind of funny. That was funny.
Creative.
Yeah, yeah. Still didn't give me any money. But, so when I see those signs, what do you think I give those individuals? Because I'm not giving them money. What do you think I give them? I give them some dignity, right? I make eye contact with them. When I have time, I stop and talk to folks. If I can give them a resource, I certainly will, a card or something else. But I give them dignity. Why? Because it's my belief that part of the reason that they're out there is because they feel disaffected from the rest of society. And so any way that I can bring them back into the fold, I'm going to do it. So disaffiliated and disaffected. Like they don't feel the positive effects of being a part of our fold, being who we are. Yes, ma'am.
So I would question what would make us feel that that's the place for them.
That's an important.
What
I
would
mean,
make
to
us
me,
feel
that's
that you need to go
saying
right
that
to
my
the-
fold is the place you belong, so. I mean, I guess
Yep, and I'm going to tell you, the only paradigm I can operate from is mine. And so if I see someone out, and I can't believe, and it may, like I said before, just because they believe it doesn't have to make sense to them. But what I am going to do is interact with them from where I come from. I'm not going to limit who I am by their experience. So I am going to say hello, and I am going to be helpful, even if they don't want the help, or I'm not going to try to force them to be something that they're not, or go someplace that they're not. But I'm not going to stop being who I am for fear of infringing on them, if that makes sense. And that can go a number of different places, but I want to keep that part of this conversation contained with this specific example. All right? But that was very good, Beth. Thank you. Thank you. So, what is honor? Holding in reverence. Okay. Respect. Okay. And I'd say that it's respect at a high level, right? Who do we say in our society that we will give high levels of respect to? Who? Authority. Okay. Who else?
People who seem to do the right thing.
Okay, people who seem to do the right thing. Do they have titles, positions?
Oh, the Chief Justice.
Okay, so Chief Justice. Okay.
To the traditional marriage vow.
Okay, it's in the traditional marriage vow. Servicemen and women, we say we will honor them in our society. Elders, senior citizens, we say we will hold them in high honor, high esteem, right? So answer, if you can, raise your hand if you can answer this question with the yes, this next question. Please raise your hand if you've either taken a test or purchased a ticket that made you eligible to be born on this planet. You purchased a ticket or you passed a test. None of us has done anything to bring ourselves here, right? We accepted an invitation. I don't want to think about how that invitation came because it's disgusting, but we all accepted an invitation to be here. And so now we're just trying to figure out what it means to be this last word, human. And so when I looked for a definition for human, I found something very interesting. I found two definitions for the word human. One is a noun, meaning to be a biped, having opposable thumbs, a big brain, and a belly button. If you ever encounter a person without a belly button, be concerned. Okay? Human, Homo sapien sapien, the one who knows that they exist. And then I also found that human was an adjective. And what do adjectives do? They describe the noun. So what I want you to do is I want you to write down three things, just three things that we teach our youngest humans about what it means to be a human. What do we teach our babies, our nieces, our nephews, our cousins, our friends, our neighbors? Just write down three things that we teach them about what it means to be human. right? What were some of the things the folks wrote down?
You are important.
That you're important, okay? What else? Beth?
I Kathy Eden.
Okay, that you had the capacity to reason, Kathy?
I teach him to be kind.
To be kind, all right?
Unconditional love.
Unconditional love, Michael?
I have something, love, safety.
Love, safety,
Touch.
okay? Touch, all right? Those are the things that we teach our youngest humans, all right? Do we have time for a break? Okay, so let's take a 7-minute break, and then we'll come back, and I'll do a couple more pieces, and then turn the class back over to you. All right, cool.
Someone's gonna stay in here?
Yeah.
Like copy or so.
That's a good point. I don't even really think about that.
Not here. but last month.
Very aware of it now. You the one that lost one? I don't know.
Here?
No, but I mean, if you think about it. Just watching any else.
Oh, have you been to any vacations?
No, I've been doing a lot of work in different places. So I was in Fargo last week, and before that I've been around the state quite a bit. I was in Duluth, doing some things up there, but no real fun vacation stuff. Just
Have you been to San Diego?
oh yeah, go to San Jose.
Yeah.
And yourself?
Not really. We went on a cruise last year, which was my first and probably the last cruise.
Oh really?
I'm not an old cruiser. But I'd like to get out and be on the land. I mean, I enjoy being in the water, but I want to get out and see things and do things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to just sit lessons from beautiful. I mean, sometimes I'm sure that's
Where
nice.
did you go?
We went to, let's see, we started in Cozumel, Cozumel, and then moved down as far as Guatemala.
Okay.
And so, and the most difficult was Guatemala,
Okay.
because we were with some friends, and we all kind of put our money together and asked for a special trip. And very cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad we went, and I'm glad we got to just not see where they sell the jewelry. And,
Yeah. Yeah, I went on a cruise, and it was the Western Caribbean, and so we went to Belize and Playa del Carmen. There was another place. But when we did do pit stops, we got as far away from town as possible as time would allow, and to get into the real community and see real stuff and eat real food.
Yeah.
It was funny being in Belize. I saw a black guy. Now it was he was out of context for a number of reasons, but it was like 100 degrees outside, and he had on a jean jacket, and jean pants, and this sweater, and he looked very urban, And so finally I had to ask him, because he's in Belize. I said, man, where'd you get your outfit? He said, Chicago. And I was like, oh. He was like, yeah, I go to Chicago all the time, man. I got cousins there, blah, blah, blah. It just never, I I never put Belize and Chicago together.
And then it was like, then what are you doing here?
Yeah.
I mean, how,
Yeah,
how
like,
is
how does that-
that for you?
How does that work?
Yeah.
Oh, really? So.
Yeah. So funny.
So I wonder what
That's
happened
good,
to
though.
the
Yeah, it's kind
internet.
of cool, actually. I hope he does.
I have a fake one.
Okay.
That's blue, right?
Okay.
My real one has a race skin, red race skin on the handle, and then the sheath and everything.
Gosh, you should bring a picture of that. That'd be cool to see.
No, I probably shouldn't bring the
Okay,
actual
good.
thing in.
It might be a little bit illegal.
but- Yeah, right? Might get a little, some people nervous.
Oh. Okay, it's fixed.
Some of your, you're qualified.
I'm Asian. Aren't I supposed to have one?
Oh, man.
Your computer working?
Yeah, it, I don't know what happened to the network, but
Network is good.
it fell off the network and now it's back on, so.
It's like group over on, you guys can go over for a good portion of on Race Street, right? And
Yeah,
Race
that's a
Street is
great
always
tool
icon.
to, I put my presentations on there and then
And he's always Bones by choice.
stores the
Bones?
videos.
You know Bones?
Yeah.
Bones by
I just
choice.
seen him today.
Yeah, Bones by choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, his brother's a doctor, his mom is well off, and he was decided to take him. So when you said that, it kind of, I was like, yeah, that's right. Bones is like that. He's had plenty of people step in and say, hey, we'll give you a place to stay, and
Yep.
he's rejected it all.
I think I knew from that town, that side.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, my uncle knew him when they were kids. When they were kids.
You watch a lot of Seattle football?
Yeah. I don't watch football at all. Really.
I was lynched on
I didn't. Just never really got into it.
Let's ride.
Did I tell you what my new role was?
Huh.
With the unit?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
with,
yeah, AWOL recovery.
That's awesome.
So, my wife found a bunch of these addresses in my car. She's like, what are all these names and addresses?
You better come up with some answers.
Are you stalking people or what? And I'm just like, no. For drill, we had to go pick all these people up. She's like, this many people? Really? No.
Yeah, so I'm trying to
So I am now the bad guy.
hydrate myself, balance.
You work with the, local public schools pretty much, or
My jurisdiction is very limited, and you can only help people who want help, so. But I wanna,
I'm sorry, that's fine.
yeah,
What?
anytime they wanna
File?
engage, I'm ready to engage.
Right here, and what's going on?
I'll check right
The first batch,
Yeah.
PowerPoint, yeah, I didn't have any second batch.
Me?
Yeah.
You're like an older version of Microsoft Office or anything? or-
Thank you. No, that's fine.
Oh, right here. I'm opening up the families of
Yeah.
African origin. Yeah, I got it.
Can you forward it to me so you can read it?
Let's see here. I am trying.
FAG. I contact them.
You like your contact?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just recently switched over to them. Quest just because I got it for 2 years for $20.
Yeah, I like it.
I love it now.
Yeah, I have like, 4 different, I wanted music account, one,
Okay.
account, one personal, just because it's free.
Yeah.
So I just keep it separate.
I have yet to use one of their accounts. I have too many accounts as it is, so.
Cool. So we will we'll go ahead and get started. What you have at your desk or at your place is a blue card that looks like this. And what I'd like for you to do is on the back side of this card, I want you to tell me what you've learned about the categories across the top. So African Americans, European Americans, Latino or Latina Americans, Asian Americans, disabled Americans, and Native Americans. What have you learned about those groups from the groups on the side? So from your parents and family, from your friends, from school and workplace, from TV and movies, and from personal experience. And I want you to do that in a very specific kind of way. What I'd like for you to do is if you learn something positive from the people on the left about the people across the top, I want you to put a plus. If you learn something negative, I want you to put a minus. If you didn't learn anything at all, or it wasn't a conversation that you had, I want you to put a 0. All right? You can have pluses and minuses in the same area, but the size of your plus and the size of your minus describe how much you learned. All right? So if you learned a lot of negative, then you have a big minus. If you learned a lot of positive, you'll have a big positive. If you have a little bit of positive, you have a little positive, and a little bit of negativity, a little bit of negative. Does that make sense?
So what age do you throw it at?
However you want to describe it, whatever time frame you want to use, however you want to interpret what I'm asking you to do. And so I'll give you the time now to do that. All right? Give me just a couple more minutes. We probably won't finish the whole card, but I wanted to get you started. Stop right where you are. If I were doing this in a traditional workshop that I would do, what I'd have you do is pair up with 3 other folks in quads, talk about your cards, discuss what you learned, what you didn't learn, some areas where you have zeros. For the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. But what and then I would jump into this next set of questions, which is, as you were going through categorizing, were there any emotions or thoughts that came up for you as you were doing that? Yes,
I
Justice.
noticed that when I got to African Americans in TV and movies, I thought, you know, a lot of the stuff, or most of the stuff, if it's a documentary, portray African Americans positive, but everything else that I can think of is all negative.
Okay.
However, at school and workplace, if it's overwhelmingly positive, even to the point of propaganda, and nobody dares say even breathe or even let it know think anything negative. So it's as if somebody's hiding behind the movie screen, pumping out all the negative, and then everyone's trying to compensate face to face in the classroom.
What before I before I take, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I know what you're saying, and I see that too, but what I see it portrayed as is the younger generation of I don't know, don't really want to use the word, but like gangsters and drug dealers, and I know what you're saying, but a lot of what I see too, I see that a lot, but I see a lot of it as mainly as a younger generation.
Yeah, when I was a kid, if they didn't call them gangsters, they call them pimps or hobos or.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, same poop, different pile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I don't want to use the gangster term, but my
It's appropriate to
generation
use
is-
for
is-
where we are now, you know. Other thoughts, because you pushed something in me that I wanted to get out, but I'm gonna stay reserved.
Wusa?
Other thoughts or feelings as you were filling out those categories? Go ahead, Ken.
I was just thinking that, how did I learn about this? I don't know that we ever had a conversation about any of this, but it was mostly through the attitudes and not necessarily direct.
So they didn't have a curriculum for you?
No.
Not a syllabus or?
No.
No.
They never even really told me how to act with anyone. It was just all, model. Good and bad.
Good and bad. model.
Yeah, bad.
Bad.
I find interesting that there was, in terms of emotions, there was a sense of contentment and happiness around some of my memories of friends.
Okay. So your memories of friends brought you contentness or happiness?
Yeah, the friends that I had that were people of color.
Okay. All right. Other folks? Feelings or emotions that get stirred up while you're doing
I just noticed that mainly family and friends, when it comes to disabled Americans, I never really had any kind of negative or positive interaction or learned anything, It was kind of like, okay, this is who they are, and so it was just like, oh, all right. And then I've had positive experiences, in schools. Okay. These people, they could use some help in certain areas and whatever else, and whatever we can do to help them, let's try to accommodate that. And whatever
Okay.
else.
What does silence say? It says agreement. Okay. What else does silence say?
Could be disagreement.
It could be disagreement,
Yeah.
right?
That's too much to talk about.
Right? I mean, have you ever had, you're at the end of some kind of relationship and you know it's the end, they know it's the end, and you sit there and it's like, silence, right? Silence says so much in so many different ways. So we'll talk about that. I do want to come back to what Justice kind of brought up, because I think from an Adlerian point of view, it's extremely important to remember this when we deal with people who have obtuse behavior, strange or large or irregular behavior. And in the context in which we've been talking about, I want to talk a little bit about kind of that bigoted individual. Because how would Adler explain, or how could Adler explain their behavior? That they're discouraged, okay? They're trying to what?
Belong.
Trying to belong, okay?
That they're using their whatever group that they're bigoted against as an excuse not to be on to that text.
Yeah, which is also, go ahead, is overcompensating. Racism is overcompensating. And it's overcompensating for what? An inferior feeling. And so when we see these people who lash out at others, it is typically because they are overcompensating. That lashing out is an overcompensation of an inferior feeling. We were growing up, we would say if somebody would bring a gun to a fight, who's really afraid? The dude with the gun, because he's overcompensating for his inability to throw down. And so one of the things that we have to remember is that people who are typically acting out are doing it because of they're missing one of these three things. And so that caused a false superiority complex to come, which is actually just an exaggerated overcompensation of their inferiority complex. All right? So, just wanted to go ahead.
I think I understand how that relates to what I was saying, but I'm not quite sure. So I was
Okay.
saying how in the classroom, it's overcompensating one way. And I'm wondering, and this is kind of my question when I went through this, if everybody's pretending in the classroom in the workplace that there isn't a problem, or trying to overcompensate for a problem, then is that the reason why the news media, the television and movies are the only places where you can see negative stereotypes attributed to African Americans, because people want to watch that.
Toyota keys? Anybody missing?
Well,
Well, I could use a new Toyota. But
Yeah. Like a new car.
If you sign, you give me back the keys to it.
So what I'm offering is,
my question.
so what I would offer to that statement is that the truth is in between those two different forms of overcompensation for an inferiority, if that makes sense. The media is not true. The stuff that they, like, one of the things I used to, and I'm only going to pick on this because I'm African American and this is something that I've experienced. When I was growing up, they told all African American kids that you were a king or a queen from Africa. That can't possibly be true. Because if everybody was a king and a queen, who's cleaning who's cleaning the stables? Who's washing the dishes? Who's, so it was that kind of thing, that overcompensation, because they have an inferiority complex, boils up in classrooms, if that makes sense. Right? White supremacy is another example of that. Those people who feel, we're the blah, 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 and they're not.
I think silence, too, is just a way of avoiding a topic you're not comfortable with sometimes.
Yeah. How many folks here were in the military at all? All right, cool. I'm going to draw on you guys in just a bit. All right. So let me move on. I'll do this last piece, and then I will be done and turn it back to you. I love. So I love ABC News because they have all sorts of like goofy stuff on. Many of you have probably seen their show, What Would You Do? Have you seen that? Yeah. They pose the ethical dilemma and they watch how people respond to the ethical dilemma. So I'm going to show an ethical dilemma and then we'll talk about it. All right? So here we go.
Uh-oh.
Why is she doing this? Sorry about this delay.
Hello, and welcome to the opening show of our primetime series, What Would You Do? If you see something and you think it's wrong, do you step in or do you step away? What people say and what they do aren't always the same. That's why our hidden cameras are so revealing. In our first scenario, we weren't sure what to expect when our opinionated man behind the counter meets the Muslim woman in a headscarf.
Deep in the heart of Texas, at this little roadside bakery, bigotry is being served with a coffee and Danish.
But I have a question.
No, ma'am. We don't serve Muslims here.
I'm sorry?
This is America. We're at war with your people.
I don't know what you think I am. I'm just trying to get an apple.
Well, you're a terrorist is what you are. So,
excuse me?
you gotta take your business elsewhere. We don't serve your kind here.
The other customers at this bakery near Waco seem to hear everything, but they barely look at the Muslim woman, even when the language is tough to take.
Get back on the camel and go back wherever you came from.
Sir, I'm an American. I was born and raised
No,
in
you're
this
not.
country.
Americans don't wear towels on their head.
Muslim Americans say these are words they hear all the time in all parts of the country. But here at the bakery, what the customers don't know is that this Muslim woman and the man behind the counter are actors. The bakery is working with us, all part of a primetime hidden camera experiment on prejudice and patriotism.
Please take your business elsewhere. Am I asking too much?
When no one even tries to help her, she makes a direct appeal.
Sir, would you mind ordering me an apple strudel? That's why I'm here. I can give you the money. I have no problem.
Please no, sir. I'm not gonna let you have it.
But when he gives her the cold shoulder, she finally just leaves.
You could have helped her out. You could have spoken up. Why not?
Me speak up for her? Well, if he tried to do some harm to her or something, then I would have.
Well, why not try to set him straight?
I really think that a person that owns his own business should be able to say who they sell to.
She's not American.
Others seem to agree with our actor as to who's an American and who's not. Is it all based on the way we look?
I'm an American citizen. I just would like an apple strudel, please.
Well, I'm sorry. Then why don't you dress like an American? There's
This
no
is for
American.
religious purposes, sir, and I don't think you have any right to say anything.
So I'm religious. I don't wear, Halloween costumes around. I mean, am I wrong here, sir?
Not me.
I run my business the way I want to run.
That's right. Don't come in here with that confused skirt on.
This customer is adamant that the man behind the counter is doing the right thing.
I'm ready for you.
But the fact is, it's against the law to deny service to someone based on their race or religion.
My name is John Quinones, and I'm with ABC News. What did you think of what you heard here?
I didn't hear anything racist.
He told her he wouldn't serve her.
Well, he can say he wouldn't serve you if you come in here barefooted without a shirt on.
But she wasn't barefoot or without a shirt on.
Well, she wasn't dressed right.
What do you mean?
If I was running a place, I'd do the same thing.
You wouldn't let Muslims shop at your store?
I sure wouldn't.
We never expected customers to be so candid.
How do I know you don't have a bomb in there?
Watch what happens this time, when, once again, our Muslim woman is denied service
This is not right.
and again leaves.
We reserve the right to not serve.
That's right. That's right. That's, I appreciate saying that. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that.
He not only commends the man behind the counter for his discriminatory behavior, but he gives him the thumbs up, not once, but twice,
Good job. All right.
as he leaves.
Can I talk to you, sir, for a second?
But when I approach,
Sir, we're with ABC News.
there is no thumbs up for me.
We staged a little experiment in there to see how people would react to that kind of attitude. I'm American. I am an American.
That man took it a bit farther, telling me I'm not an American.
He was threatened.
Jack DeVideo is a social psychologist at Yale University.
So when we as Americans feel threatened from the outside, we're going to define ourselves in very rigid fashions. Either you're with me, and if you're not really one of me, then you must be somebody else who's against me.
The young woman in our experiment is an actor, but for this woman, discrimination is all too real. Nahaya Javed helped us design our experiment. Although born in Chicago, she says she's constantly characterized by fellow Americans as the enemy.
They always start off with, you're a terrorist, Osama lover, towel head, camel jockey, on and on.
While attending college in Texas, she says she continually suffered verbal abuse and has even been physically attacked just because she's Muslim.
They assume I'm not from here, and if I tell them I'm American, they're like, no, you're not. just because you were born here doesn't make you American. And I'm like, so what makes you American?
It's a daily battle.
And I don't feel like living in America, I should have to fight this battle.
Meanwhile, back at the bakery, our actor is at it again.
But how do I know you're not a terrorist? Terrorists look like you.
But this time the customers are sympathizing with the Muslim woman.
Right, I know, but can you blame me?
Yeah, I can't blame you, actually.
Why? What's the problem?
Hey, we'll get out of here. You need to go yourself, actually. What do you need to do?
Okay, sir. I'm a good American, all right? We're at war with these people.
Go yourself.
So is mine.
And he's not the only one who walks out in anger.
You need to stop segregating against people. It's wrong.
Excuse me?
These Americans
No,
are
you're a bad American.
Time and again, people speak out with their pocketbooks.
You ordered a couple of customers, just so you know.
But look what happens when this man threatens to leave.
You're not a good American, sir.
I believe I am a good American. My son just came back from serving in the Army for over a year in Iraq, and that has nothing to do with her right.
I understand that, and I hear what you're saying, but
I can't believe you will be so discriminatory. I'm deeply offended by that.
I'm sorry to offend you, sir, but I've got to live with myself.
Seething, the man vows to fight back.
I will let people know this. I've stopped here every time I've come by this place, and I'll never stop here again.
Why did folks get so upset?
They saw an injustice. It's justice that binds us together. It's justice that makes us a society. Any threat to that kind of sense of justice and fairness undermines the entire system.
You're really not conservative?
No, I'm not.
Perhaps that's why more customers are outraged by our actor's hateful behavior than approve of it.
You're not dressed like an American.
But no one is more persistent than these two young women who can't believe what they're hearing.
Take your jihad, take it back out to the parking lot.
Excuse me?
I mean, I gotta protect my customers, okay?
You're really offensive and disgusting.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to protect you here.
Thank
because
you. You're
don't know
too
what's
sick.
going on.
Like that doesn't mean anything. This is a
How do you know?
culture.
These people are trying to kill Americans.
Disgusting. It is my culture. So you're ready to serve me, but you're not ready to serve her.
You're obviously dressed like an American.
Big deal. She's Muslim.
And unlike the others, they don't just leave in anger. They stand their ground.
So you're going to regulate what people wear?
Yes, because I
Are
believe
you
the
the
degree of...
manager?
No, I'm not the manager.
Can I speak to your manager?
I'm John Quinones with ABC News.
It's only when we catch up with our heroines that they finally let their guards down.
I'm with my friend who's, Muslim, and I've just seen how people treat them differently. And they're really hurting.
Just watching them stand up for what they believe in touches Professor Davidio.
In a way, they defended America. And I was impressed by that, because they wanted this to be a just society, a just place, a just bakery.
I'm John Quinones.
And remember this man whose son served in Iraq? He's also moved to tears.
Every person deserves to be treated with respect and dignity,
No matter where they
or
are.
a situation, no matter how they're dressed.
Never have we seen reactions so polarized, from a thumbs up for prejudice to an emphatic thumbs down.
Go yourself.
Two different Americas, both convinced they're patriotic. At the end of the day, 13 people stood up with a Muslim woman, while 6 sided with the clerk. But the majority of the bystanders, 22, did or said absolutely nothing. That's what's most frightening to Muslims like Nahaya, who was watching our experiment. In fact, so frightening that they often avoid going out by themselves.
It's really sad because I'm old enough to be able to do things by myself. I shouldn't need a chaperone all the time. But that one time that I'm alone and something bad might happen, I'd rather be safe than sorry.
It's no wonder this young woman was so moved by the people who came forward to protect a stranger who just happens to be Muslim.
Thank you so much for what you did. I wish more people would do these kinds of things. And
I do too.
it would make my life a lot easier.
God go with you.
Thoughts, comments, observations?
Both disappointing and encouraging.
It's disappointing and encouraging, okay? You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
You know, I'm very unhappy that so many people sided with the clerk, and very happy that and more people confronted the clerk. And,
okay.
You know, a little, what do you say, unsatisfied with the majority of people that did nothing.
Okay, cool.
Look at the numbers, like 22 people didn't do anything, 6 people did.
Yeah.
Sided with the clerk, and like 13 or 12 spoke out.
Yep, so 13 people that were positive, there were 6 that were negative, and 22 that did nothing, did or said nothing. Yes.
We have a long ways to go.
We still have a long ways to go, okay. Ted?
I would just make it that one of the important things about this particular issue is that the concept that the United States is in a religious war, that didn't come out of nowhere. That was part of the sales pitch. There's not a person anybody can tell is there. A lot of those people probably really think we are in a religious war.
This was in Texas, you said?
Yeah.
They have difficulty with it.
Okay.
I agree. I thought that, I can only remember the face of 2 of the people who sided with the clerk. Both of them seem to be older, like 50 plus.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
one of them at least 50 plus, I guess, and the other one maybe in 70.
Okay. So let's first remember who this is, who this story is coming from. It's coming from ABC. Who is ABC connected with? Who's ABC's parent company? Disney. Disney owns ABC. What is Disney good at doing? Who's the leader of the clouds and men? What are they good at doing? Happy Place. They're good at telling stories, right? So they're good at telling stories. So they start this story off in a really kind of good way, right? So they start off. Do you remember the music? And he's deep in the heart of Texas, right? So that is already, what is that drumming up for you?
It's not quite the Bible Belt, the Eastern Bible Belt, but it's definitely like an area where there's, I don't know, some history of.
When I hear that music and I hear someone say "deep in the heart of Texas," I don't get liberated minds. I'm not getting pictures of Yale and Harvard in my head. That's not what's coming to me. I don't know what's coming to you, but that's not what's coming to me, right? So they tried to they started to try to set a tone for the story they're going to tell. And then the ultimate result in that is typically people would say, well, of course that happens in Texas, right? Could this happen in Minnesota? Yeah, right? It could happen in Minnesota. As a matter of fact, they have videos of things like this happening here in Minnesota, right? So one of the things that bugs me about the anti-racism training is that they don't take into account some of the things that we've been taking into account. One of the things, and I'm not sure if people are familiar with that mode, they talk a lot about structural racism, and then they define racism as race plus prejudice plus power equals discrimination, right? Which is an incomplete definition at best. Because ultimately, it is individuals who work within organizations that make decisions that create these kinds of things. For example, let's talk about what we saw in the video, and then because we don't know what happened outside the video. So people may have made different decisions outside of what they showed us in the video. So let's just use that as our allegory. So the people who were negative towards her, who did not want her to get apple strudel, there were 6 of them. So we'll refer to them as the negative 6s. What typically do we call or do we say about those negative 6s? We call them bigots. What else do we call them or say about them? That they're racist, that they're ignorant, right? So once we say these things to those individuals, do they go, oh, that's what it is. Now I'm ready to be helpful. Is that what happens? No, what happens? They fortify themselves. They entrench themselves. They dig in. They deny stuff. You know, the guy said, well, I didn't hear anything racist. Nobody asked him about hearing anything racist, right? But that was his response. Why? Because in some way they're trying to get one of these three things. That attitude that they had worked in the past, so they believe it should work when? Now. But the problem is that it doesn't work now. And so when we call those people racist, one of the things that we do as good people is we try to disconnect ourselves from those bad people. I know that, at least in my family, there is at least one individual who would fall into a category like this on a number of different things. It's my Uncle Joe. We'll just call him Uncle Joe. I'm sure you have an Uncle Joe in your family who is someone who is not politically correct. They say the wrong things, tell the wrong jokes. You're not so concerned about where the kids are as long as you know where Uncle Joe is. Right? And so what typically happens is good people like ourselves, we try to disconnect ourselves from Uncle Joe. Why? We don't want to be perceived as an agreement. Why else? He makes us uncomfortable. Why? We don't want to be associated with him. Why? Because we don't agree with him. And why don't we want him around us?
Because we don't want people to think that he's one of...
Because what he believes is stronger than what we think we believe. We are afraid of what Uncle Joe represents because I don't know how to combat Uncle Joe because he might have a point. And so to make myself better, what must I do with Uncle Joe? I must eject him from my point of view so that I can be solid. Yes, I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. And Uncle Joe is like, really? Can you really? Can you really? Is that really how it is? Are all people equal? And you're like, yes, all people are equal. All people are equal. And Uncle Joe's like, yeah, right. Uh-huh. And then you hear that little voice in your ear and you're like, maybe he has a point. No, he doesn't have a point. I'm going to come over here and be my good self. We're afraid of Uncle Joe. We're afraid that what he believes is stronger than what we believe. That's one of the reasons, right? So the other reason, but I have to say, I love the negative sixes. I love the bigots and I love the racists. When I see a kid with, earrings all over it and tattoos and piercings and swastikas and black boots and a skinhead, I get excited about that kid. Why? Because he's got conviction? Because I know he wasn't born like that. Somewhere along the line, he learned that all of those things that he's created for himself works for him in some way. He gets something from that. And so as a teacher, I get excited about that. Because if he's learned this way of being, guess what? I can teach him something different. And so although I don't necessarily understand, I don't know where he's coming from, but I know that he's getting something from this kind of behavior. And so if I see a thug, pants hanging down, mean look on his face, I get excited. Why? Because he wasn't born that way. He learned how to operate in the world. And so if I get to some of the stuff right here, then I can get to help him change. But I can only help him change if what? Yeah. If he wants to change. If what he's doing is not getting him what he wants, I can help him change. All right? Questions, thoughts?
I was thinking that those two examples especially are, those are two people that really are putting a huge amount of energy into getting him. Might be not channeled in the healthiest way, but they're working really hard. So that could be nice.
But again, if he wants to. You know, we do ultimately, William Glasser says it, we ultimately do what we want to do. No more, no less. The trick for us, though, is to try to figure out how do we get them to do something. So the negative sixes, we typically try to cut them off. And what I would say for the negative sixes in your life, what your first inclination to do with them is the wrong inclination of what to do with them. I was watching Animal Planet, and they had they were following some wolves. And they had them as puppy wolves and then teen wolves, and then they showed them growing up, and they went for their first hunt. And so they went out for the first hunt. The alpha wolf runs out and plays his part, and he jumps on the back of the elk, and he, he's on the elk. And what does the elk do as a response to someone jumping on him? Yeah, he shakes him off and he kicks him, breaks the wolf's hip. What's the wolf's new destiny? Death. There's no hospitals. You don't have no HCMC for wolves, right? So his new destiny is death. So he knows he's going to die. The pack knows he's going to die. So what decision does he make for the betterment of the pack? He separates himself. He leaves the pack because he's going off to die. When we have negative sixes in our life and we try to separate them, one, because their noise is too clamoring and is messing up what we think how good we think we are. Typically, we try to separate them. What happens is that those negative sixes get separated from us, and do you think they get better or get worse? They get worse. So whatever sick, demented thing that you're separating yourself from, you get them away from you, and they get worse. Now, humans are more social than the most social wolf. And so once that negative six gets separated from the rest of the pack, guess what he does? He finds another pack of sick wolves just like him, and they start breeding. And so now you've gone from having this one individual not be healthy to a whole group of individuals who are now educating other people about how not to be helpful too. So Andre, what are you suggesting? What I'm suggesting is this. The negative sixes in your life, the only way that they get better is if they are in relationship with you. If you are as good as you think you are, there is something about you that should rub off on that negative six. If you're as good as you say you are, right? Competition is only good when you're competing. Anybody can say they're a boxer until it's time to get punched, right? So I would suggest that those bigoted folks, those racist folks, those homophobic folks, those sexist folks, can only get better if they're close to you. Now, what I'm not saying is that you need to take punishment, that you need to be disrespected, and that you need to be, beat up by these folks. You need to have standards. But I have to tell you, the only way that they can get better is being close to you. All right? The 13s are pretty easy. They're people who are courageous, they are connected, and they find allies. To have courage, what's the precursor to having courage? Fear. You cannot have courage if you're not afraid. And when I say fear, I mean the two types of fear. One, having the emotional ambiguity of the unknown, that kind of fear, right? The second type of fear is that high level of respect for something. For example, I won't just go swim into the middle of Lake Nokomis because I fear it. It is greater than I am. I won't make it back. So I respect and fear Lake Nokomis. All right?
You have to have integrity to have courage too.
Yeah.
Because you have to take a stand for something. And as soon as you take a stand for something, it makes it possible for you to be a hypocrite. So if you try to avoid being a hypocrite by never taking a stand for anything, you can't possibly have integrity, but therefore you can't possibly have courage either.
So what are the other, there are some other things that allow you to have courage as well. You served in the military, yes? Very. Who else served in the military? Okay. What things did you have to go through that actually gave you the courage to do things that a normal civilian might be afraid of? What kinds of things did you do?
Training and exercise.
Training, exercise, and what else?
Basic soldier before you.
Yeah.
But it all started with having to take a stand. I decided I'm going to take a stand because I say that I love my country and I know put my money where my mouth is.
Nice.
Without that integrity, without that stand, without that standard, I love my country, I would not have been compelled to prove it, to put up or shut up, by doing an act that requires courage during the military.
And I would also say, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I decided to do the first business started going because I felt I had the ability. I felt that I was mentally, physically able where somebody might not have been. And so.
You've been willing to risk.
A willingness to risk? Possibly, yeah. Yeah. But I will tell you, what I will tell you is that the drills and the exercises that you did prepared you for the unknown. Yes?
Yeah.
You drilled and you practiced situations that were probably not likely, but could happen, and if they did happen, you would be prepared. So not only did you do the drills and the practices, but you also had the resources in which to carry that stuff out. Yes? No? Okay. That's going to become important when we talk about the 22s in just a second. I don't know if you noticed, but the 13s, the people who stood up, when one person stood up, somebody else stood up. Or they could say, you know, I'm standing up today because of somebody I have a relationship with over there, right? And they find allies. Even if they're not physically there, they find allies, all right? So here are the folks that people typically have a lot of problems with, which is the 22s. And I would typically, yeah, right, that they're fearful, that they're the silent majority, and they're Minnesota nice. What does fear do when you haven't practiced? It paralyzes you, right? I mean, have you ever noticed how many deer are on the side of the road? You know, have you ever seen a deer kind of stop right in front of your car? Why do you think they do that? They're terrified. They haven't prepared. They haven't practiced. They don't have the right resources. It's a surprise. Like, hey, what is that? Let's go see. You know. So fear can really paralyze you. What is the silent majority? Has anyone heard that phrase before? Okay. It was made famous by a guy named President Richard Nixon. Most of you are too young to remember who he was. But he's the president that said, "I am not a crook." The one that looked like a potato, that guy. And the silent majority simply was the groups during the 70s. There were lots of people making lots of noise about different things in society. And what Richard Nixon said is that all of you who are not making any noise, who aren't saying anything, you obviously agree with me because you're not saying anything. So the silent majority. They also refer to it sometimes as Minnesota nice or passive aggressive. That's another way to talk about that. But typically when we talk about the 22s, the thing I think that really paralyzes them or keeps them fearful is the fact that they haven't practiced these conversations.
Or that they haven't
go ahead.
taken a stand. They haven't decided whether they want to be a -6 or a +13.
And it's my belief that if you've practiced that enough, then you can take a stand. And like you said, you made a decision to stand up for your country.
Stand for one or the other first before they start practicing whatever it is that they want to go after.
Yep.
So you have to have enough integrity to say, I am this.
But I would like to offer another way. I would imagine that there were probably some systems in your family that helped you to get the integrity to be able to say, I want to join the military.
Yes.
And so there were these small pieces of practice that happened with you to the point where you were built up enough to say, you know what, I can join the military. So I believe it's the same thing. But before you can have that integrity, you have to have these small pieces of practice.
There has to come a point where you're going to have to make your choice.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And therefore taking a stand.
Everybody
So
has
if
to
the
have a
minus
point.
Sixes had all of their family upbringing, their system prepared them to be their minus. We can certainly present them with training and resources, but they're never going to be able to be a plus until after they take the stand to be a plus. They have to actually say, I will be a plus. I will not be a bigot, or I will be equal opportunity. Until they make that stand, they won't be able to. And that's probably what the other 22 think that they're doing. They haven't made a stand, but yet they're not causing any trouble.
And so they think it's
And so they think
okay.
that they're okay. But they're not okay, because any movement that they're producing is useless because they haven't taken a stand.
And actually, it may work against their best interests.
Right.
Their silence may be working against them, and they don't even know.
I was
Yes,
going to
Kathy.
say, I couldn't be part of the 22, and
Oh.
it was because I would lose belonging if I spoke up on either side of that.
I mean, we've all been in some way or another part of the 22 because we haven't taken a stand on many different issues. I mean, there's somebody starving someplace in the world, and we can do something about it or not do something about it. There's plenty of injustices going on that I haven't taken a stand for, which makes me one of the 22.
And so when I hear Kathy, when I hear her say, it's not as simple as saying, because I'm going to lose one of these three things if I do that. However, what I will say is that for me, there have been situations where if I was a 22 because it was safe for me to be a 22. But I did say within myself, okay, I was a 22 this time. Next time, I'm going to say something. I may not necessarily call somebody out, but I'm going to do something. And so when I talk about that, before you can get to that integrity part, because integrity is almost, at least to me, it's almost a firm foundation that you step on. You go, oh, yes, I have arrived. But before you can get to that platform, you got to kind of have some little tests of bricks under that platform that you slowly build.
What I'm saying is, by having integrity, before you have integrity, you have to make your choice and therefore take your stand. So when you say you've been one of the 22, but then you told yourself next time, well, when you didn't do what you thought you were supposed to do, you still took a stand, but you didn't measure up to your integrity. And that put conviction on you. But if you did not take the stand first, no conviction would have occurred.
Okay, I'm not going to fight you. I mean, I think we're really close together. And I guess what I'm saying is, it takes a little bit of integrity, a bunch of different times to have really big integrity. Is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's
right.
really true. Right.
And so, so here's an example. So I'm at the grocery store, and there's a woman in front of me, and then there's a woman in front of her. Now, the woman in front of her has a basket full of groceries, 5 kids, and limited English. And I think her predominant language is Spanish, right? So she's trying to, and they're in the candy aisle. So she's trying to get all these groceries, to the checker, and the kids are sneaking stuff into the cart. So she's trying to get the kids to get stuff out of the cart and just managing this whole thing. And her English is limited. And I only know it's limited because every time she says something in English, I'm cued in. I'm like, oh, I know that word, right? So all this stuff is going on, and the woman in front of me, who is behind this woman who's having all this stuff, is doing this. Right? My grandmother would describe that behavior as acting ugly. And so I'm standing there and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what this is. I have my PowerPoint in the car. I've got some cards. I can just break it down right here. And I thought about that. I was like, no, that's not it. So what will I do? So this is what I did. I went just like this. That's all I did. What do you think happened to the woman's behavior that was in front of me? Who was behind the woman that was doing all this stuff with her kids? What do you think happened to her behavior?
Looking at him a little more.
Yeah, she stopped. She stopped her behavior. Now, I didn't say that she was doing anything. I didn't do anything big. But what I did was I interrupted. I caused cognitive dissonance so she could think about her behavior. And that helped change the moment. So, go ahead.
All she could think about is how much the person in front of her was bothering her, and she didn't think about how her behavior was bothering someone behind her.
Right? She probably wasn't even aware of her behavior, right? Because sometimes we operate and we're just like, but causing that cognitive dissonance, I had her think about her behavior, right?
Did you think that the woman was behaving or acting ugly because the woman was Hispanic?
I knew that she was acting and behaving ugly because she was not being patient with a woman who may have just happened to be Hispanic with a lot of kids in the candy aisle. I think generally her behavior was ugly. I don't think it was specifically because the woman was Hispanic. But given all of those things, it was still ugly behavior. Had it been a white woman with blonde hair, I would have done the same thing.
But how would your PowerPoints and your cards in your car have helped if it would have been a white woman who was...
Because that doesn't fit very well with the story that I'm trying to tell. All right. So honestly, it really wouldn't have mattered, because the other part is that we know that these are the three things that people are getting. They may be getting to them in inappropriate ways that don't help them benefit themselves. I've done the same thing with, at Nordstrom's Rack, right down the street. I'm in a shoe aisle and I hear a group of kids using the N-word, with each other. They're like, yo, what's up, man? And I'm like, ah. I'm like, that's how they talk to each other. But if they say it one more time, I'm going to say something. And guess what happens? They say it one more time, so I have to go up there and say something. And I walk over there and I said, excuse me, I was just, I could overhear you guys. Could you guys please stop using the N-word? And I said it just like they said it to each other. And one of the bigger kids, kind of comes out of the group and he comes face to face with me and he looks me dead in the eye and I look him in the eye and I'm, I broaden my chest a little bit because that's, that's what you do. I'm not, look, if you're going to knock me out, it's not going to be because I'm running, right? So I'm like, he looks at me and he says, yes, sir. And then they go back to their stuff. On the outside, I'm all cool and collected. On the inside, I'm like, right? I cause them to think about their behavior. Will I change how they relate to each other and what they say to each other? Probably not. But they will think about that behavior in the future. And so that's what I would ask you to do. Look for ways to make sure that people are getting to this. And even though, people may be inarticulate, not understand how or why they act the way they do, but this is the kind of stuff that they're getting to. This is what we need to give people. Can you imagine what your life would be like if everybody gave you this unwarranted, not wanting any favors in return, but this is what you got. And so when we work with folks, this is what we need to give them, even though they haven't earned it. So there's that. So safety, belonging, and significance cause people to think about their behavior. I mean, we're really, nobody really wants to, in my belief, hurt anyone. They think that what they're doing is the best thing given the tools that they've been given. And so let's try to help people find that. When we talk about the anti-racism or dismantling racism training stuff, What they fail to do is to reconnect people to these truths. They use a lot of blame and fault and guilt, particularly on white people, for things that most of us had nothing to do with. And so I think it's more empowering to talk about how do we restore these things to people than talk about who's at fault for the system and those people need to give up stuff. If it would make no sense for me to ask you to give up things that you're comfortable with, things that you've earned, to take care of my family when given the right resources, I could do it myself. One of the things that the Dismantling Racism stuff talks about is that white people have privilege, and we need to give up that privilege so other people can have privilege. I totally disagree with that way of thinking. I think white people need to have their privilege, be happy with their privilege, be proud of their privilege, and then let me have my own. Don't stop me from getting the same kind of privileges that you have. I think charity sucks because what charity says is that I will give from my high place to your low place, but never pull you up to be high like me. And so as you think about how you work with different communities, ask yourself, am I doing charity? Am I just giving them resources so they can be happy where they are? Or am I actually trying to pull them up to have the high quality of life that I have? If that's what they want. I'm not trying to say that that's not what they want. What I am saying is, am I creating opportunities for people to be and have the same kind of happy life that I have? All right. I'm trying to think of other pieces of wisdom I can offer you. I think that's it for what I have. I really appreciate your time and your interest in being here tonight. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, please let me know. Give me a buzz. My website is andrecohen.com, and my email is andre@amhorizons.com. You have the cards. My contact information is on the cards if you want to go to a website or whatnot. And as you move forward as professionals, I'd be really excited to hear how you're doing this stuff and what you're doing with your education and how you're helping to heal people. So there's that. There are a couple of books I would suggest that you read. One is Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. That's been a really helpful book for me. There is also Derek Bell's Faces at the Bottom of the Well. I would encourage. Dr. Martin Luther King's Letter from a Birmingham Jail. Absolutely crucial if you're going to do this kind of work. And there was one more. Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Derek Bell. I don't know. If it comes to me, I'll let you know. But those are.
Can you steal content of our character collection?
Yes, content of our character is a great piece. It's a great piece. Yeah, and do your own homework. I mean, that's extremely important in doing this work. And it is not okay for you to feel guilty about being whatever socioeconomic group you're in, because that's not helpful to me. If you can't swim and I'm drowning, you are no good to me. Give me somebody who can swim. And a lot of times in these conversations, trainers and organizations try to make white people feel so bad about themselves that they feel incompetent, or the reverse of that is that they feel so angry that I don't want to help. And what I would say is love yourself, because that will allow you to love other people. So that's it. Thank you so much for your time.
Andre,
yeah.
Thank you. I really like what you said about that. I want to keep them in the fold instead of rejecting, those that would be either racist or, you know what I mean? That really kind of spoke.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, like, actually, it makes more sense if they're around you, there's always a chance for change.
There's a
if
chance.
Not, then it just fortifies them.
Yep. Yep. I mean, Art of War says, keep your enemies, your friends close and your enemies closer.
That was
right?
Godfather, Andre.
Oh, is that Godfather?
It's okay, though.
I was just going to ask if you ever do talks with youth at like a youth program for like churches.
Yeah.
to be hired to do something, not just contact you?
Yeah, just contact me. Yeah. And I do want to tell you, the road that I've taken to get here has been a long one. I used to hate white people, straight up. You know, Whitey did this and Whitey did that. And then I realized you can't do anything. When you come from a place of anger, you never get real results. It may feel good, but you don't make friends, you don't keep friends, you don't help move agendas. And so you have to be collaborative. And you have to focus that energy in a way that is productive. And so, so it's not like I just woke up one day and became who I am today. But it's all those learnings and lessons and opportunities that I've had to interact with folks. If you ever get a chance to teach, do it, because it'll teach you so much more than you will teach the kids, because it did for me.
Well, I was just gonna ask if you've ever seen, on a lighter note, Louis C.K.'s version of his take on the N-word.
No.
You should look it up on YouTube sometime.
Okay.
Pretty crass. It's kind of funny.
Okay.
Poignant.
Cool. I will look that up. All right, cool. Thank you. Your class is yours.
Well, let's take a break till 1:45 and come back on articles, news articles.
Want your markers back?
Oh, yeah, right here, Martin's back.
What are those?
I-
Well, that's all left.
I did change.
You're not sure, huh?
You guys were so, actually, found the floor, buddy.
I know.
I didn't want to get it. Yes, sir.
Hey, Carol? Yes. I had emailed you about not needing to open the,
Yes.
he forwarded it to me.
Oh, we did.
They're coming to me as some odd screen or something like that, and I don't know, it's weird. I can't open them here, on their computer or on mine, but when he sent them to me, they're PowerPoint, so, it's just so strange.
Okay.
So anyways, I have them.